I think a lot of people are upset for multiple reasons. They feel like this is, endangering their well-being. It's getting insane, dude. Like it's magic, essentially. It because these systems, they are learning how all of this stuff works. They're learning like basically physics, and they're learning like all of these, basically the entire repository of humanity. It's and nature.
Yeah, it sounds pretty intimidating and scary.
You don't want to lose your lunch to somebody who's just stumbling through the dark whenever you've got 20 years experience understanding these things so deeply, where you can, just leapfrog uh, into this whole new paradigm that's happening. I think everyone's just like, we're going to get back to what the true purpose of all this is: storytelling.
Right.
My son.
All good, dude.
Yeah,
I might have some kids running here at some point too.
gotcha.
Um, cool. Well, welcome to the show today. I have with me Brent LeBlanc. He is a longtime friend as well. I've had lots of friends on the show. Brent and I met in 2012 at Digital Domain. And after that, he went on to Blue Sky Studios. He's a texture and material lighting artist, kind of originally, but I think we'll get into some of this cool stuff you've gotten into recently. But yeah, now he's at Amazon. I have you as a technologist, a 3D technologist. Is that right?
Yeah, a design technologist is what they call it, but it's like kind of just a TD role, um,
Okay,
making tools and stuff like that. Yeah,
that's pretty badass. So, I mean, there's lots of Brent's work professionally is amazing. I've always been a fan of his work, but he's recently gotten into some really crazy stuff, like on those personal projects. And you also have a YouTube channel, Brent LeBlanc on YouTube, and
hmm
do you do Twitch stuff as well, or
I used
um,
to. I
okay.
it was like too much of a time sink, so I just kind of fizzled out after COVID ended.
Okay. Yeah. So, real quick, I just want to share my screen and show some of the stuff you've put up on YouTube, some of your personal projects, and maybe we could
Sure.
just kind of dive into that before we get into the cool Amazon stuff, if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's great.
Awesome. All right, cool. Let me share a screen here. Yeah. So this is a short that Brent did in Unreal back in 2022, and maybe you could talk about it a little bit while I play it. But this is amazing, man. I remember being blown away by it um,
Oh, thanks,
when
dude.
I first saw it a couple of years back. So let me kick this off.
Yeah.
And then we,
So, do
yeah,
you want
go.
me to talk over it?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh no, no worries, no worries. Yeah. So it kind of started as, um, my sister and I have always been wanting to make like a short together, or make some stuff. She's a uh, like an aspiring filmmaker. She's a storyboard artist, and so I wanted to. Actually, how this all happened was I was at Pixar at the time, and I decided that like there was all this other stuff that was going on. Like Unreal was just really starting to pop off, and there was all these other pieces of technology I wanted to learn. So I just quit. Like I quit with no job in lined up or anything. I was like, I've been working 12, 13 years nonstop. So I was like, I'm just gonna take like a year and just learn a bunch of things I've always wanted to learn.
Can I
And
pause you for a second? Because that's
sure,
that's insane, man. I don't know anybody who like you're working at Pixar, one of the top studios in CG,
yeah,
the original OG, and then you're just like, okay, I'm going to quit because I see some cool tech and I want to focus on that for a year. That's
yeah,
insane, man.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
It was pretty nuts.
How big of like were you married at the time when you made that
Oh
decision,
yeah,
or
I had two kids, so
so
I had to
what?
get buy-in from my wife. Like I had to explain, like, hey, I'm only gonna do this for uh until my union insurance runs out, essentially. So we had like a little bit of money squirreled away for taking care of rent and things like that. But
Right.
then I had union insurance for about 8 months. So I was like,
Okay.
at the end of this 8 months, well, probably before the end of that 8 months, I'm gonna start looking again. But I'm gonna use the next 6 months and just really crank on stuff and just learn everything I can. Because the one of the reasons why is that I've been working about 13 years nonstop, and working at those studios is amazing. but I saw that they were still so focused on the shipping product that I never got to sink my teeth into some of those other things. I was always like kind of falling back to, okay, let's paint rocks, roads, like, buildings, etc. Shipping, and I never got to play around with all this stuff that was happening in the background that was just blowing me away. So I thought it was important for me to, I was still young, I'm almost 40 now, but I was like, I'm not even 40 yet. So what other time do I have? Yeah, I just did it. And I kind of saw my whole life ahead of me if I stayed at Pixar. They wanted me to move to San Francisco, which is like one of the key points that was kind of pushing me because I'm in Los Angeles now and we didn't really want to leave. And they were like, hey, you need to come up here because, work from home is ending. I was like, I don't want to do that really. And so I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna let's do something crazy. So that's essentially what happened.
That's so kick-ass, man. That's it takes so much balls to do something like that, especially when you have a family and you have responsibilities, and
Yep.
to take a leap of faith like that. I mean, and it's paid off in dividends. I can see that already, but like, I think it's super inspiring, and I think something that every artist out there should probably think about. We do get caught up in just the daily grind, and we're never really taking a like lifting our head up for a moment and just trying to get a view of the what do you call it, the playing field or whatever. Just it's like, okay, what should I be doing? What should I be learning? Is this the direction I want to be going in? So
Yeah. I,
that's
I
really kick ass.
I think the guiding like factor for me is how comfortable do I feel in the work I'm doing? And if it's too comfortable, then I need to move, like turn it up. You know what I mean? You always need to like David Bowie said that you wade yourself out into the water until you can't feel the bottom. And if you can't feel the bottom, you're almost far enough until you can do something cool. And I always like thought that was a really inspiring and interesting thing to say. And I totally believe that. I think you need to feel uncomfortable and do things that are beyond your capability, and that's how you like go to the next stage.
That's so cool. I mean, you've inspired me even with your YouTube content and your streaming content before. Just seeing you do that stuff has kind of inspired me to make this podcast. Help me make that decision. And um, yeah, I'm kind of at that point
That's
in my
awesome, man.
career too, where it's like, I've been doing this for a really long time as well. And yeah, like
Mhm.
what is there out there? What's the next endeavor? So, all right, I'm gonna get back into this, and
Sure.
we'll keep going. So let me go back to my share on the feed. Okay, so all right, let's play this.
Yeah. So we were, so my sister and I was going to do this fellowship. And so we just like kind of came up with a rough script. And we just were like, let's make this like cool short and use Unreal as a way to do it. So I was learning Unreal the first time making this short. So we were just kind of like, building the tracks or laying the tracks as the train was roaring by. So, and I had never really made a film either. So it was like a bunch of firsts for me. I was like, well, but I've always wanted to, and I've always been a huge fan of just film in general. My sister is the same. So we just like cranked on this thing, and I think we made this in 6 weeks, start to finish, like
That's
concept to,
insane.
yeah, it was really fast. But at the time, I was not working, so I was like doing like 16-hour days to get it done. Yeah,
I like that. I'm just
yeah,
kidding. Yeah. So yeah, because you're just like in full geek out mode, right? You're
yeah.
not cranking for somebody else on maybe something tedious or something that you've done a billion times. This is like all new stuff, and you're just trying to digest as much as possible
Right.
and figure stuff out, and that's
Yep.
crazy. So I'll let you continue, and then I have a bunch of questions.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we actually used a lot of the Megascans assets and things like that to speed up workflow. But majority what we were trying to do is like, I think the most painful part about this is I am not an animator, so animation is kind of awful. But there's a lot of tools that kind of helped that along. Like we had some mocap that we could use, and then I could like record my face and kind of transfer it. But it was still not as good as what it's getting today. Um, but yeah, just huge inspiration from like Kubrick and Denis Villeneuve, things like that. Has a lot of inspiration there. Like this really vibrant, contrasty like color and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah, it looks great, man.
Oh,
Yeah, so
thanks.
going back to for the assets for this, like the
Mhm.
ship and like the starfield, like all that stuff, did you have to model anything, or did you grab kind of pre-existing assets for like
The
the
suit,
this stuff?
the ship, those I bought those as actually like probably there's only maybe 4 or 5 assets that I had to create because the timeline of this thing is so fast. So I bought
Yeah.
the ship, I bought the suit, and then I just retextured the suit. Um, so I would like retexture some assets that I bought, and like that cup, this that whole joke, like my sister and I made this like kiss my
Uh-huh.
astronaut was like because we wanted to be this like this guy is like a kind of a snarky dude, and
Yeah.
he would totally have something like that. But we also wanted to tell like sub stories. So we had planned like this cup, for example, like Sono breaks this cup when he's doing the thing,
Hmm.
and then like he's kind of like, dude, did you broke my cup? And then in the next episode, we were gonna have Sono like have a whole shipment of like 50 of them sent to his ship when he's like gets back to the depot. So like these like little sub stories, we're like trying to figure out little ways that Sono, his AI, and him kind of like play with each other as far as like messing with each other. Yeah, so it was there's like two personalities.
Yeah. And then so for like his clothing and things like that, was that just
Mhm.
part of like the MetaHuman library, or is that something
Yep.
more custom?
Yes, it was like metahuman, like use the metahuman default stuff, and then I would retexture assets or like parts of it. Like I would like retexture the shirt to be more in line of like what we wanted for the character. But yeah, I used a lot of like marketplace stuff or just like assets that are available through Unreal Engine itself.
That's cool. And then when you're working on the textures for these things, were you doing that straight in Unreal, or were you using like Substance or something to help you with
Substance
that?
Painter mostly. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Sometimes just Photoshop, depending on what I'm doing.
Right.
But most of the time, like Substance Painter is like my go-to. It's like the thing that I really was most comfortable using throughout my career.
And how'd you find working with materials and lighting and things like that in Unreal compared to other, you know, DCC type centric lighting?
Oh, it feels like you're just working in a physical studio. I mean, that's the greatest thing about it is like it's what you see is what you get. I mean, you're just moving stuff around and it just looks beautiful. So you're just, I mean, like, because, traditionally I've been in offline rendering. Like I was at Blue Sky with you and uh, DreamWorks and Pixar and all those were like offline renders. I mean, they look amazing, but you don't even really know what it's going to look like fully until it's been through like the whole pipeline. You know, usually those dailies every day, you'd like see get an idea of what it's going to look like.
Right.
But this was like I'm looking. It's like you're looking at a live action plate and you're just moving stuff. Like just this every shot, I would light it as I was doing it. So I would like go linearly like through it. I would set up all the shots and then I would just go through and then I would just relight them in frame and then just like play it back and be like, oh, this looks good. And I would just move lights around until it looked good.
Uh-huh.
It was just really intuitive. It was like the most intuitive way to work.
When I hear you talk about that, I was telling my kids the other day about the disposable cameras that we grew up with, like just film cameras, like you used to take pictures, you had to go get it developed, and you had no idea what your 24 pictures were going to look like
Right.
until like, 3 or 4 days later when you get them back from the, the drugstore or whatever. And I
Yep.
kind of feel like it's the same thing with, just pre-rendered stuff. It's, you're working on all this stuff and then it has to go through the rendering process and the compositing or post process, whatever that's going to be. And then weeks later, you get to see what it finally looks like. But with this,
Yes.
um, it's like a digital camera. Like you take a picture and instantly see what you have, and you can make
Yes.
adjustments. And yeah,
Yep.
that's so cool. Did you do any post processing on the the video itself, or was it all done in Engine?
Yeah, I did some like just some grading, like using Lumetri, I think it's called something like that in
Okay.
Premiere. Um, but yeah, just like some color grading to to get consistency or to get things to pop a little bit, I might use like a LUT or something like that. But
Hmm.
as far as like, doing any paint over or any matte painting type stuff, it was like all shot in camera. Even this shot in camera.
Yeah, so is this just did you have something outside the ship like a sphere, or was this
Yep.
kind of mapped on? Yeah.
Yeah, so like it's literally just I had like a whole series of planet packs that I bought off
Uh-huh.
marketplace, and which I used for like the true environment, like the big shot where he sweeps in. This is just a scaled down version of that. I just duplicated it, and it's actually got an atmosphere, and it's like animating and stuff like that. So
Oh,
it's
really?
yeah.
That's cool.
So, but I kind of like that idea of, instead of it being like all kinds of gizmos and like Iron Man HUD type stuff, I was like, I
Yeah.
just want it to be really like straightforward and simple. How it's just like, it just looks like it's it just optically
Yeah.
shown.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's cool to hear like your thought process and how you went about setting this up.
Hmm.
Um, and then so when it came to the animation stuff, I forgot, was the metahuman facial capture, I forgot what they call it, like metahuman animate, or what is it?
That was not there yet, so it
Right.
was like, it's much better now. um when I did this, we were actually using 4.27, so we didn't even use Unreal 5,
Oh,
which, so
wow.
we did not use Lumen for this.
That's crazy.
It's still pretty good. I mean, but we did use the ray tracing. But yeah, the animation was just not as good. It's like super clunky. It was hard to work with, but it was also user error. This is my first time using Unreal and animating anything. So
Yeah, so like when he's like leaning back in his chair, um, was that was that like motion capture, or did you hand animate that, or how did that?
it was both. It would be like I would get some mocap, and then sometimes I would like push the animation, do additive layer animation to kind of
Hmm.
like push stuff in the right direction, as best as I could. Like this shot specifically, like his fingers are like going through the cup,
I saw that. Yeah.
and
It's
it's like shifting weirdly. Yeah, because like, yeah, I was learning essentially. Um,
right.
but it was so great because I was so uncomfortable throughout the whole thing because I was learning so many new things. But that is how you grow. Um,
Oh, for sure.
yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah, that's crazy. How much work were you in Maya, if any, on this?
Um, so building out a few assets like that cup, for example,
Hmm.
I had to do actually the shatter simulation I did was in Houdini.
Oh, really?
Um,
Is that
yeah,
after this part, or is this before it?
I think it's after. It's like when they're on the planet already.
All right,
Uh,
and he's kind of jumping off the.
yeah. And I had since learned there is like weird artifacts when it breaks. I have since learned that's because I did not export the correct scale. So I'll be able to that was a learning experience. Like so like
Oh,
the physical scale of the object. So like at the simulation, it's a basically Unreal Engine thought that it was like a tiny, tiny, tiny cup.
that's
So
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I know. Like when you're exporting from Maya, we're in centimeters, and in Houdini, it's in meters. So everything is times 100.
Hmm.
So um, if you bring in a default asset from Maya into Houdini, it's like 100 times the size than if you're doing physical simulate. And then I'm guessing there's probably something going back to Unreal that's similar.
Yeah,
Oops.
the issue was it imported into Unreal really small. Instead of me redoing the simulation at the correct scale, I just scaled up the asset to look right. But the
Ah,
problem is that the way that it does like rolling shutter and like, it's uh I guess it's like motion blur calculation, it actually needs to know the correct scale of the object. So that's why it like looks a little strange because it like right here, you see there's like a little weird ghosty trail behind it.
yeah, like this, you mean?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that's that was like one of the little technical quirks that I learned after we made it. But yeah.
Uh-huh. That's nuts. How was it managing the project in Unreal itself and all the data and everything?
Mm.
Did that get, being your kind of first go at doing this, was that did you have to figure that out as well, or were you just using like the folder structure and like the content browser, things like the normal stuff to organize all those things?
Yeah, I kind of what I did was I had like a separate level for each location, and then I would just treat it like a physical set, and then yeah, like I would just create a folder system where it'd be like, assets, and then it'd be like ship and
Uh-huh.
what everything would be inside the ship. But pretty straightforward. Like I would say that I, I've never been really good at that type of thing as far as organizing things. So,
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, it was actually quite easy. It just felt like a physical set. Like I never like in offline rendering, each shot is like a new set a lot of times, or sometimes at least. It's like they'll just like make it work for that shot, and it's like a one-off
Right.
thing. Um, this was like the entire sequence on the planet here was just one set, and I would just move the camera around, and everything's like in real time. So I just be like this shot, okay, cool. And then I like this one, and then I would just like kind of dress things around. And in the timeline, you can like animate or like do a visibility or translation inside the timeline so that you could like move rocks for a specific shot, and then the next shot they would pop back to where they were supposed to be.
That's crazy. Yeah, I was just gonna ask, like, once you were happy with a certain shot, how did you lock that down and make sure that you didn't go back and mess it up by accident, since it's all still in the same project?
Oh, I'm sure that there was like a lot of issues I ran into like that, but it was pretty smooth because I was the only person working on it. If there was
Right.
multiple people, I think that would get like a little bit unwieldy.
Turn
Um,
into a little bit of an issue. Yeah, did you
yeah.
when you were saving this stuff out, did you version up your project at all, or did you like save out like just in case you did jack something up where you couldn't
hmm
get back easily?
I did do that a couple times. But I probably should have done a lot more. So like I've learned more now. So like now I use Perforce. I use Unreal
Perfect.
pretty often now, and we use
Uh,
Perforce. And I didn't even know what Perforce was back then, but yeah, it's amazing. I'm sure it sounds like you're familiar with it too.
yeah, I've used it a little bit myself too. But yeah, it's a great like version control system that
Yep.
keeps things keeps things organized in that way.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's so cool. I could probably stay on this for a long time. But you have some other amazing projects I'd like to talk about too. And
Yeah, most of the stuff I'm just like I'm stumbling around in the dark. Essentially, I'm just like find something that looks interesting to me, and I just kind of like see how far I can go down that road. I suppose.
okay, so where to go next? You have a few things that are really new.
Yep.
Um, and so you kind of, oh, I didn't even see this stuff, man. You have all sorts of cool things.
I kind of went on like a tear recently because some of the like AI image to video stuff has gotten quite good. So I've always been really interested in like mood and like sound design and editing, and I was like AI is the perfect opportunity for me to focus on that. So it's like I'm not making the images really. So I mean I'm prompting them, but I'm not really making them. So I felt like this is a good exercise for me to do everything else. So it's like design a kind of a place or a story loosely, and then really focus on like sound design and mood and pacing and editing was like my real focus. Yeah.
And plus, just working with generative AI in general, right? Like that's a
Yep.
huge part of this. And you've mentioned that you've kind of been catching some heat for that. Is that
Oh yeah.
like what? Can you talk about that a little bit? What's going on with that?
Yeah. I think it's a lot of things. It's some of it's misunderstanding, some of it's warranted. Uh, so I think a lot of people are upset for multiple reasons. They feel like this is, endangering their well-being. Um, at the same time, the way that I think of this is that human beings learn from each other. And so the computer is really just doing that. It's learning. It's not, I think a lot of people think that there's some type of clip art happening, or it's like, lifting images and like compositing them together. That's not what's happening. these systems are learning. They are learning uh, the way that we make things, and it's the same way that you know, like Tesla cars. When you drive one, you're training those cars to drive better. And whenever we use Google or all of those other systems, we are training those systems to be better at their job essentially. So I think that this is just the first time where people are like, "Whoa, wait a minute! You're like coming after the stuff I like doing," and it's like you don't have to stop doing that stuff. Um, and I don't think you should ever be afraid to pursue something um, that is like a little bit controversial, as long as you're honest with how you're doing it. So like, I'm not claiming these images are mine. uh, what I'm doing is like I'm exploring. I'm not making any money off of this. I think there's a huge distinction there. It's like I think you just have to be honest with what you're doing, but do not be afraid to do this stuff. Like I don't think that you should ever pursue the world like that. It's like, dude, you're gonna turn around 3 times and you're gonna be 80. So it's like if there's something really amazing happening, like pursue it and see like what you can get out of it, like creatively. Um, I'm 100% for it.
Or even, yeah, you'll turn around 3 times, you'll be 80, or you'll turn around once and the whole, when you go to get your next job, it's going to be a different environment and you're going to be caught off guard. That's
Yes,
kind of true too, as well.
totally. I think the
Yeah.
people that are going to leverage the most from AI is going to be artists. These are just tools. Like the people that are going to get crushed, like the people are like the prompt bros or whatever. It's like, dude, if you're an artist,
Prompt bros.
yeah, exactly. It's like, dude, you will crush them because you have all of these technical skills and artistic skills you learned over your entire career, and you can apply that stuff. So, like, really, I see AI as a way of scaling your already capability. So it's like you already are capable of doing certain things. Use AI to force multiply your current ability, and it'll
That's so cool. That's such a great way to put it, man. Like you're amplifying your natural ability with this tool,
right.
and that's a great way to put it. I'm gonna go back to I'm sharing my. Let's see here. So kind of, can we walk through some of these images and talk about maybe how you were able to generate them? I'm just in
Yeah, yeah,
general just curious about it.
yep. So
Yeah, yeah.
these images was like a sometimes I'm using stable diffusion, and which you have way more control. Like which I started just messing with Flux, which is really amazing. Black Forest Labs, which was like some of the people from Stability left and started their own spin-off company called Black Forest Labs, and they're doing insane work there. But also messed around with Midjourney. I know that's a bad word, but the reason that I would use Midjourney sometimes is
Uh,
it's fast. It's really fast. And you need to if you just need to get ideas out, it's like you can just go write them, get something, and then start working with it. Stable diffusion has way more control. So if you're going to do something for real, I would suggest using that because you can really control 3D space. So there's this idea of control nets. I don't know how much you know about
I
like
know very little. So yeah,
filmmaking.
I've literally messed around a little bit with Midjourney back months ago, or maybe a year ago or so,
Gotcha.
and kind of didn't go much farther than that. So I'm really curious about. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So like in stable diffusion, there's this idea of control net, which is like the ability to use other enforcement layers. So you can use 3D enforcement layers. So like you could set up a 3D environment in the composition that you want it to be in. And then the AI, you can feed it different layers of enforcement like depth or normal map or color map or a lighting channel. Um, and then at inference time is what they call it. Is so basically it's like when you decide to prompt it. So there's the text prompt, but then those other control nets, those are prompts as well, but they're visual prompts. So it's like it's understanding what the 3D environment looks like. It understands where things are in space, and you can like construct a scene, much like you would in a traditional sense.
Do you know at all what's going on under the hood with that? Is there um,
Yeah,
any similarity to like a 3D and like a scene in a 3D program, or is it kind of conceptually building these things? Like, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, a little bit. So I have built or like I have made some custom models, and what the diffusion process really is like is you're training it on averages of things. So it you're basically you'll see like images and you'll uh, basically give them a prompt of what's in it. So understand you're labeling it to what this arrangement is. What's a contrast? What are the objects? What they look like in certain scenarios. Then what you're doing is essentially cloud watching. So you have a really noisy image, and it's just random noise, and then it goes through a step. So every step it starts to resolve the noise, and then say if you said like dog playing in a backyard.
Hmm.
So the noise will start to resolve and it'll look for shapes. And it'll say, this shape is starting to look like a dog. It is literally like cloud watching. And then by step three, it goes, this shape we've decided is the dog. And it'll keep doing that. And then it'll say, these are the eyes, these are so it's essentially like trying to, it's cloud watching, essentially. What you're doing with ControlNet is you are basically forcing what its focus is when it's starting uh, to undiffuse the image. So it's like say if you have a pillar in your scene, it's going to say, "Oh, this looks like a pillar right now." So it knows like where it is in 3D space, and it'll start resolving that like as a pillar if it's part of your prompt. Or like if you said cheese, it would be like a block of cheese
That's so
in that
cool.
spot. Yeah.
That's nuts. So then, on these images where things are moving and there's the perspective is shifting,
Hmm.
um, can you talk about like where that comes from and how you're able to
Yeah.
generate those?
Yeah. So often what I do is once I have an image, I'll like take it into Photoshop, and then I'll like fix stuff. Like I had to superimpose some stuff in this image so that there was like consistency between the two, even though it's like a little jank. So like that little cartouche or whatever that symbol of that guy. Um, there's a shot before that one. Yeah. So I had like composite stuff so that it would
Hmm.
be it's like dragging you along the story a little bit more. You're kind of
Right.
doing traditional work that you would. But once I have like my images that I really want to use, then I'll take them into Luma, Dream Machine, or in Gen 3 Runway. And you can just do image to video prompting. So you just take your image that you have, your final image you want to use for that shot, you throw it in there, and then you do another layer of prompting where you say, like, I want to do like a bottom to top slow pan, and it'll just animate the camera with some parallax. And then sometimes you have to re-roll it a little bit to kind of get what you want. And then I would take it back into like After Effects or in Premiere and then fix stuff. Like I'd be like, oh, I want to add like smoke here, or I want to add like kind of like I was re-driving camera moves a lot. So I would like over render and so that I
Okay.
could kind of shift things around, like move things a little bit faster, a little bit slower. I actually want to start messing with depth maps uh, and breaking things out into layers so that I can have more control over like things that are parallaxing. But yeah, a lot of this parallaxing stuff
Yeah, this
is
shot
AI.
is like really,
Yeah,
really cool. So
yeah,
you basically had did you have just like a still image of this room?
yes,
And then,
yep,
and so, yeah, like there's this stuff happening with the floor and stuff's getting revealed
yeah,
as, that's really cool.
yeah. It's basically inventing. It's like it'll take the context of the image that you've given it, and it'll invent new information underneath.
Well, you like the water.
Yeah, it's getting insane, dude. Like it's magic, essentially. It because these systems they are learning how all of this stuff works. They're learning like basically physics, and they're learning like all of these, basically the entire repository of humanity. It's and nature.
Yeah, it sounds pretty intimidating and scary.
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
All right, so can you tell me about that, the eye-opening shot?
Yeah.
Can you tell me where her face came from, like
Yep.
0 to 100 on this shot? Like, yeah, let's dive into this. This is cool.
Yeah. So for this shot, this one was actually came together really easily. Um, one that I had drive it a little bit more. So this one was just uh, I did a diffusion pass on it, and then I went in Photoshop, maybe fixed some things that I wanted to be in there, like paint the things out or paint things in, just to kind of and maybe like adjusted color and that type of thing. Um, for the monster shot, well, the Cthulhu essentially is what it is.
Is that
Uh,
after this?
yeah, I had to do two states,
This one,
so
yeah.
I had to paint his eyes, so it didn't quite get the how I wanted it, so I had to do a closed eye state and an open eye state. And I just um, you can in some of these programs, I think in Luma, you can give it a first frame and a last frame. So you can say, this is what I want the first frame to look like. This is what I want the last frame to look like, so that you can control. Like basically, it'll do the interpolation. So like I would shift the monster in space a little bit, and then
Right.
like open his eyes, and then I would like have the monster like shifted maybe in its original position with its eyes open or closed or whatever, and then I'd say interpolate these two images into animation, and then that's essentially how that shot was made.
So the light is playing on the surface as the
Yes,
camera changes, and that's blowing my mind right now
dude,
because
it's AI. Like it understands like the shapes of the because and this is like not generating this image from a prompt. It's not prompt to video. This is like prompt to image, and then you modify the image, then you take the image and then you go image to video. I mean, just that. Like if anybody that's like, a little bit more dubious about the whole like the image generation part, it's like go make your own images and then you can use those images and convert them to video. It's still your images. You know what I mean? So it's just trained on motion. It's it
man.
it understands motion and parallax and all those things.
So when her eye opens here, was that just to like a start and an end image, or how did
No, this one was like literally me saying, open her eyes.
what?
Yes.
And like look at the wrinkling on her eyelid and stuff,
Yeah.
man. Like that,
Yes.
as a rigger, I'm looking at this and like, okay, like what would this take for me to create this, or work with a modeler and a texture artist and all these things.
Yeah.
Um, it would take a good bit of work.
Yeah. And like the thing is that you don't have to stop doing those things. You can just
Right.
focus on the things you love to do. Is I think that's like the most key feature. It's like my brother's a potter. It's like we don't need potters. It's like we have factories that make pottery, of
Right.
like, cups at scale. But that's not why he does it. He does it because it's like, and people still buy pottery. So it's like I think it's just you focus on the things you love to do, and if you really pursue those things deeply, that you will find an economy in that work somehow. It's like
For
if you work
sure.
really hard, you'll find it. So I think we're just going to start working on higher order problems in the future, and there's gonna be jobs we don't even know exist yet. It's like trying to explain the internet to somebody from like 1850.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Or like the Industrial Revolution, like all those things, yeah, like we're not worried about how we're going to put food on our table. So now we get to focus on other things like building things in 3D, or,
Yeah,
exploring new technology. For sure. It's like amazing. But it just, it makes me think, if there's a smaller studio or place that just wants a proof of concept or something like, hey, we want the shot of this girl opening her eye. Like,
yep,
do we need to spend 20, $30,000 on that, or can we generate something that'll get the point across and do a great job at it, and
yep,
spend a bit less money, but able to create at least get the project out. It's
yeah. I think what we're gonna see is a lot less big studios, a lot more small studios that are getting they'll be making really big things, and they're not going to have returns like $1 billion anymore. That's like that era is over. It's just people
Uh-huh.
can't afford to spend money on movies like that. So, but what's going to happen is 10 or 15 people are going to get together, make a movie, and they're going to profit share and make more money than they ever have in their life, even though it's a small amount of money. It's like, say they make $20 million and there's 15 of them. They're like, dude, we just spent 2 years and made a million each. You know what I mean? I think that's where we're headed. So I think a lot of these people that are mad at studios, I'm like, go make a small studio. Like if I was a big conglomerate, I'd be shaking in my boots right now. It's like the small artists are the ones that are going to be most empowered by this.
The stuff you're doing with this, Brent, I haven't seen anybody else do. I mean, I know there's probably other people doing this stuff. Maybe I'm not plugged in enough, but seeing you do this stuff, it's like I feel like you're kind of shining a light on a path. Like, hey, like everyone's really upset about AI and all these things, and you're kind of like, no, over here, guys, I found a tunnel. Like, let's get out this way. And I think you're kind of blazing the trail a little bit, man.
Oh, thanks, dude.
Yeah, you're doing really cool things. It's artist driven. It's really tasteful. I don't know. I think you're onto something really cool with this stuff, and I'm glad you're doing it. Um,
Yeah, thanks, man. I think there's still a lot of art to be made here. A lot of people are thinking like they have to have like a complete hand off the wheel. I think the thing that I found out the most is like a human in the loop is not going away. It's just
mhm.
that the problems that you're solving for are going to be different, and they're going to be higher order problems. We're not going to be spending like 6 hours painting rocks anymore. That's just that world's gone. And if you want to go do that, and for Zen or for meditation, go for it. Nobody's going to stop you. But there's this whole other world that's emerging. It's going to change everything.
I think that's a really important point. And I think, you know, it's going to be like the whole old guy, like back in my day, we used to have to, you know, paint rocks or, you know,
Yep.
paint skin weights a certain way or spend, you know, 3 weeks working on eye shapes for this one shot where a character would blink her eye.
Yes.
Um, yeah, but also, I don't know, like I find myself kind of holding on to stuff where it's like you are a little bit scared or a little bit, um, you know, you kind of want to hold on to what's comfortable. Like going back to what you said before, like pushing that comfort level. It's easy to kind of be like, well, I'm really good at this. This is what I know, and that's all hogwash. That's you know, cheating or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I think we're selling ourselves short if we don't look at this stuff and try to figure out how we can use it and what we're doing, like you said, and just use it as a tool.
Right.
And
Because I mean, the experts in those fields are going to be using it 100 times, like an order of magnitude more efficiently and more effectively than somebody who's like stumbling through the dark. And it's like, dude, you don't want to lose your lunch to somebody who's just stumbling through the dark whenever you've got 20 years experience understanding these things so deeply where you can, just leapfrog uh into this whole new like paradigm that's happening. I think everyone's just like we're going to get back to what the true purpose of all this is.
right,
Storytelling, right? It's like we're telling stories. That's really what the whole purpose of this thing is. And like a lot of people are like worried about this. I'm like, man, I want to get good at storytelling. I want to make 1,000 films before I die. That way, maybe three of them are really good. You
that's
know,
so cool. Yeah,
that
I
would be
think
great.
as like a tech artist, we tend to get caught up in like the nerdy stuff, like the process itself. Like I really enjoy writing a rig builder or whatever it is that like you know people just get lost in. But
Yeah,
like that's not the end product. I feel like it's like like I don't even know what you. It's just like a little sub part of that. You know, like the end product is like the pixels on the screen or the like you said the story
yeah,
and you know what tools do we have to get there and are we still driving in a horse and buggy or can we take our Tesla
yeah.
Model Plaid or whatever and get there a lot faster. um,
And I think those jobs will still exist. Like
yeah,
so, they're just gonna change a little bit. Like you'll be basic. And like the way I see it in the future is we're all gonna have these fleet of agents, and you're gonna be the CEO, and you're gonna tell your agent managers You're going to say, hey, these are my strategies and this is what I want to do. Here's examples of the work I want to see. And you will give them all your expertise that nobody else has. Things that you've thought about or wanted to build or have built. You say, now look at this. This is like what I want to see. And then you delegate down that stuff to them. Then you're just working on higher order problems. You're just going, okay, this, and then they are executing at scale. So they're like going and rigging that elephant in that
Right.
whatever, all those creatures or whatever they're doing. Um, and then you're able to, bring in some other expert who is going to be the CEO of that like core knowledge base that's going to apply to that. So like people are still going to be working together. Like I think a lot of the things people are like that'll get hate about is like, why don't you want to work with real human beings? I'm like, I never said I didn't want to do that. It's like I like these little shorts that I made. I'm spending like 3 or 4 hours a night, 2 nights in a row to make a whole thing from start to finish. It's like it would have taken me like 3 years to make one of these.
Right.
I did it by myself from scratch. So it's just I'm just
Totally.
getting ideas out really quickly, and it's like so I'm iterating through a different order of problems. I'm like getting better at seeing the whole picture instead of just like really focused on a single thing.
Do you think that this line of thinking applies to AI and machine learning to other industries or just life in general? I think there's a lot of fear these days of like, hey, we're all going to be out of jobs. We're all going to need like a base income, universal income, like all these types of things. Like we're just going to be like useless humans in this world of machines. Like, do you think the way you were describing um, art and storytelling, do you think that applies to just life in general?
Yeah, 100%. I think that the future that I think about this a lot. The future that we're on, it's kind of twofold. Like people are worried about jobs being taken by these robots, but like think about this from another way. This also is a race to the bottom for cost for everything. So that means that like cars will cost almost nothing, food will cost almost nothing. Like everyone will have access to everything they need. And that's, I mean, there's 4 billion people in the world that make less than $2 a day.
It's
And
crazy.
I mean, even if you're really poor here, you are way better off than the majority of people on Earth. So I think what's going to do, it's going to lift everybody up. So like somebody in the middle of in the jungle will be able to get like appendix surgery. Like it's like, oh, my appendix burst, and then this robot, they just like go and they just, like electricity is almost cost almost nothing. The medical care will be cost almost nothing. Food will be available to everybody. So I think that's another thing that people need to consider. So it's like, yeah, the world is going to change. It's going to be really scary and chaotic at first. But on the other side of that is a complete paradigm shift in the way human beings behave. And the way that I always think of this, and it's like Jeff Bezos is really like talked a lot about this, how it's not just because I work there. This is like just I respect the guy for everything he's done. He wants to move out into the solar system, and it makes a lot of sense. It's like we can build depots out there. He's like, I want billions of people living in the solar system, like at all aspects of it. And the only way we get to a world like that is if like we are not each human being is not physically like stocking shelves at CVS or
Right.
doing those types of work. We're all working on higher order problems because all of these other jobs that we used to do that defined who we are. Like I think that's what the thing that hurts people the most is like our jobs. We have built our entire society on the idea of what type of work we do. It's like we go to school so that we can learn, so we can get a job, so that we can earn. Our entire life is structured this way. So I think it's the first time where we have to be like, what's the purpose? What do we work on? What problems do we try to solve for? Like there's no like once these systems are in place, like there's no limit on what we're capable of. We're gonna like go throughout the galaxy. It's gonna be awesome. Like I think we're like at the very beginning of a huge shift in the way
Yeah.
humanity is.
Like maybe grandkids will be there, or do you think
Yeah,
further off than that?
yeah. Like maybe my grandkids will like. It'll be very common to uh, go to this like huge facility in space as like a way to vacation or something, or even work or live there full time. I think
Well,
that's going to happen.
now we're getting into like Total Recall with like Schwarzenegger,
Yeah,
and then like Cohagen's controlling the air supply, and then
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of dark possibilities to all of this, and it's like not because of technology, it's because of people.
Hmm.
So I think we just always have to, you know, be aware of those things. I think AI could actually help us in a lot of ways, especially with governance.
Hmm.
Like one thing that humans have showed us is that they're actually really terrible at leading people. And I know this like scares the crap out of people, but I'm
Oh,
like,
for sure. Let's hear it.
what if we started using AI to help us at least guide us in certain directions, of how, like, to give us guidance on what we should do. Like, hey, this thing you're doing, it's a mistake because you're going to have a population collapse in 70 years. I mean, that's essentially what happened in China.
Hmm.
So like there is like certain things that whenever we make decisions, we don't fully understand the ramifications of it. I think AI is going to be able to see pattern recognition way faster than we could. So it's going to help us like be able to make decisions. But yeah, there's the scary dystopian part of it too that we always have to be
Yeah.
aware of.
Yeah, I often think about, you see all these cool like robot dogs and all the DARPA stuff or whatever, and I think, issues with, police and things like that. Like sometimes I wonder, like, would a not to like think about RoboCop or something crazy like that, but like, would like an AI robot be able to uh, do law enforcement better than a human that has emotion, has an ego, gets worn down over time by what they're seeing. Like,
Yeah.
I often wonder that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I guess that's kind of going way off into the
Yeah,
weeds,
that's
maybe.
yeah, it's a little bit off it into the weeds. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's fun to talk about. I think I don't know. I All this stuff is super interesting, and I love what you're doing with it. And I really urge anybody watching to go check out. Just look up Brent LeBlanc on YouTube. I'll put a post or a link in the description to Brent's work, and it's worth checking out. And hopefully inspire some people to do this on their own and see what boundaries they can push and how many films they can iterate on, or all that sort of thing. And it's just really cool, man.
Yeah. And I'd love to share my knowledge. Like whenever I get time, I'll like try to make tutorials and to show people like the way that I'm doing this stuff, because like I'm not trying to hide the information. Like I think we should all be able to just make really cool things. But yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah, and what's the best way for people to reach you if they have questions, or like best platform handle to
Yeah, I'd say
get a hold of
YouTube is a good way, like just like the comment section, or just like email me. My email's on there too in my contact page. Just Brent@bleblanc.com.
Awesome. Cool. Well, Brent, thanks so much, dude. This has been one of my favorite shows, and I look
Oh,
forward
thanks,
to doing
Jeff.
it again sometime.
Yeah, it was great to talk to you, man. It's good to see you.